Hello, welcome to my channel or video. And in this video, as the title suggests, I'd be ranting about how to improve your budget computer cheaply. Very recently, I was able to buy an Intel Optane 16GB for only 400 something pesos. Store in the description field below. Do take note that it arrived with only the M.2 covered in plastic and a very thin film of bubble wrap. And I'm actually surprised that it arrived here safely. Um, but Lazada do have this 7 days easy return, right? So if you're a lucky one, you could just simply, what do you call this? Perform a refund or a return the item, right? So yeah, in our current situation with the pandemic going on, budget computers are work from home, stuff like that. Budget computers are everywhere, right? And most probably that the configuration would be around a low capacity SSD, somewhat mid capacity, mid range hard disk drive, and I'm hoping at the very least 8 gigabytes of RAM, dual channel. And most situation is the system comes with a integrated GPU. You don't have a separate video card. It comes with a board and the CPU most of the time, most budget computers. Now, if that's the case, in this video, I'd be using Primo Cache for my caching. And in Primo Cache's website, it recommends 4 gigabytes of RAM. But if you have an iGPU, 4 gigs of RAM may not cut it. It may, but you'd be in a handicapped position, if you know what I mean. Having at the very least 8 gigs of RAM will be much better for you. But if not, I'd be showing in the conclusion part later on how you could change some settings. You may still experience a bit of performance boost, but not as much. So you be the judge if it'll be practical for you or not. Okay. And if you're not comfortable in buying this 400 peso, because this whole video only relies with you being able to buy 400 peso worth of Optane, 16 gigabyte of Optane. If you'd be buying it in SRP with the whole packaging, whatever, I may not be comfortable recommending that, because the SRP of Optane is around 25 US dollars. And if your system doesn't support Optane, you'd have to buy another caching software, Primo Cache maybe. That would total around 4,000, 5,000 pesos maybe, which is a bit much. In that price range, you could easily buy yourself a 500 gigabyte of SSD already, and use your spare hard drive for file storage. And I'm guessing that would be enough for you. But if you're able to get the very cheap Optane, this is it would be really cost effective, if you know what I mean. I hope. And yeah, so before I continue, if you guys already have an idea what Optane is, or its function, and are just curious on how it performs, you could skip to this conclusion part time here. And there's actually there's a dent there in the timeline there for conclusion. You could proceed there, where I'd be showing you guys some PC Mark results very shortly, and my preferred configuration for my Optane and 5400 RPM 2 terabyte hard drive. So you could skip to that time there. And this time, I just want to make sure your computer's is properly configured. Meaning, most probably, if you've done your research properly and the store you bought your computer from configured it properly, your Windows is installed into your solid state drive, and most of your applications, most of your games and all the other non-important files are stored into your hard disk. Okay, so that's the configuration my computer's in right now. I actually tried a bunch of other options. I'd be showing that to you later on. But just so you know, that's the settings I currently have. Okay, Windows in SSD, all of the other applications in my hard drive. Okay, and before I proceed, there are other options. We have StoreMI for if you're using AMD processor. StoreMI, I'm getting mixed reviews about it, how it performs, and how difficult things may get in regards to your hard disk if you disable it. So I'm not fairly I'm having a hard time recommending that one. And personally, I haven't tried it, so I won't be able to help you out as well. And if your system supports it, you have Intel RST, enable it, buy the 400 peso Optane, it'll be a big help. And lastly, this one here, my system doesn't support Optane, so I'm forced to use Primo Cache. We have other caching softwares out there, but personally, I'm using Primo Cache. It has subscription, yes, but try to gauge things, see if it's practical for you or not, and you be the judge of it. All right, I just performed a cold boot for my I just powered on my computer coming from a cold boot. Okay, if you guys are having a hard time understanding what cold boot and the restart is, better Google it now. Cold boot and restart. And yeah, and also, if you guys haven't seen my previous video where I covered Primo Cache, I suggest watching that one as well if you still don't know what Primo Cache is. And all right, first thing I want to show you here is Notepad. So here are the numbers I was able to come up with. There are a bunch of configurations here. I won't really go into it in a detailed manner. I tried doing this. This is actually my second take. The first video took an hour. So I decided to redo the whole thing and just give you guys a summary. So again, I did a bunch of configuration. The first one here, hard disk only, no caching. Windows is installed into my hard drive. Okay, just for comparison's sake. Hard disk, first time launched Windows, 4 minutes. On my second cold boot though, it took 3 minutes and 33. Not bad for a hard drive. 54 RPM, 5400 RPM hard drive, not bad at all. By the way, on the next one here, I just wanted to find out how much of a performance boost we're getting if we only use L2 caching. With Primo Cache, you have two caching profiles, L1 and L2. L1, you utilize your RAMs, your memory. L2, you utilize SSDs. I disabled L1. I only used L2 for caching. The first one here, if you've seen my previous video regarding Primo Cache, you may have seen this result already. Very similar to that one, and the only difference is I reduced the size to 16 gigabytes to make it comparable to Optane. 16 gigabyte of L2 cache from my SATA SSD. First boot, understandable, it took a while. 4 minutes for Windows to load up. As long as it's there, as long as your caching is not filled up, you may experience a minute of load time of Windows loading, and for the applications as well. So if you're a type of user that randomly launch applications depending on the day, some of the tasks there may get easily overwritten, so you may not experience that much of a performance boost considering you only have L2 cache enabled. Okay, with Optane though, fairly slow but quite understandable slow initial boot, initial start. On the succeeding restarts though, it became faster. On my second cold boot, for some reason it took a while still, but to be fair, I experienced a Windows system update. So that said, 3 minutes 20 is still not bad. Restart 1, it gets faster as you restart the computer. Here's the thing though, with L2 cache, it stores tasks there. It treats the files in a non-volatile way, meaning if you turn your computer off, it should store those data. Okay, but here's the thing with Intel Optane, it's providing me, or it's giving very inconsistent results, because I'm not I really doubt that it's being overridden that quickly. What I'm trying to say is, on my second cold boot, 3 minutes 20, and it gets faster as I restart it, right? But I should experience faster load time still on my third boot, which I did. 59 seconds is really good. But on my fourth boot, it became long again. 3 minutes for Windows to open. Applications are still a bit fast, but still, Windows shouldn't take this long to load. And on my fifth boot, it was fast again. Sixth, fast. Seventh, eighth, cold boot. They're all fast, but out of nowhere, again, cold boot. Ninth, cold boot. It became almost 4 minutes for Windows to load. So all I'm saying is, for some reason, my SATA SSD is performing better in load times, or rather more consistently in Windows finish loading up, opposed to Optane for some reason. Okay, and for those people who skip to this time frame for the conclusion part, welcome back. This time I be showing you my preferred configuration. You know what? I just walk you guys through how to configure your Primo cache if you're in a similar system as I am. And along the way, I'd show different possible settings as well. Okay, let's start with it. But if you still don't know how to initially prepare Primo cache, better watch my previous video. This one here, just for my system. So this is the caching configuration I currently have. Again, this is the preferred configuration. Okay, this is, in my opinion, this is the most efficient configuration I was able to get good numbers from. Okay, not having an L1 cache enabled is kind of not a good idea. First, you bought Primo cache. Primo cache is the good caching software if you have L1 enabled. So if you disable L1, you're pretty much wasting your money on Primo cache. That's all there is to it. L1, I have 8 gigabytes of RAM in my system, dual channel. 4 gigabytes of which, again, is assigned to my video card, to my iGPU, leaving me with 4. Using 2 gigabytes for memory, L1, is quite a lot. Now, the most optimum setting I was able to come up with is 512. Now, if your system only has 4 gigs of RAM installed, maybe set it to 0, but try 512 first. See if it works for you. If you're just running Microsoft Office and it may or may not help, or it may get filled up quite quickly, but it will really improve file transfer speeds. So you be the judge of it. You decide. Next, so 512 for the memory, and if you have 16 gigabytes of RAM installed, you could bump this to 2 gigabytes. Won't be a problem. And 512 here in my case. Make sure this one's enabled. Make sure that one is enabled. And write, set it to 70%. Read, set it to 30%. Why? I don't want to get through all the details. Suffice to say, or rather, to make it short, long story short, Optane has a limited function, or Primo cache. I'm sorry. Optane has a limited writing speed. Primo cache limits writing speed of SSDs. Put them together, performance is still good, but you could increase it a bit more if you have writing assigned by your L1 cache. That basically sums it up. And release L1, no, not really. So 30% for read, 70% is write is what I found very optimum. And L2, use the whole of it, max. And for this one here, it's in reverse. 70% read, 30% for write. Reason for this is, again, writing of the only reason we assign 4 gigabytes of writing here is for L1 cache. I will explain later why. Gather interval, you could set it to default. And block size, here's the thing about block size. Our cluster size here is 4 kilobytes. Per cluster, it is storing 32 gigabytes of block. Meaning, if the task it's doing is only like 4 kilobytes, it will still store it as though it's 32 kilobytes. If you're getting what I'm saying, it's not really efficient, right? The most efficient option is to choose less than or equal of value to your cluster size. Meaning 4 kilobytes of block size, 4 kilobytes of cluster size is the best optimum option. But it comes with a penalty. Look at your memory overhead. It's 2 gigabytes. Meaning, for the system to operate faster and more efficiently, you get penalized with a very big memory overhead, 2 gigabytes. And to work around that, the best option I found is 32 kilobytes and penalizing me with 280 megabytes of RAM. So not bad. So 512 megabytes of RAM plus 280 amounting to what? 800 gigabytes of or rather 800 megabytes of RAM. That's not bad. If you have 16 gigabytes of RAM installed into your computer, you could choose this one here and maybe make that 4 kilobytes there, totaling to 4 gigabytes of RAM. Not bad. Why? 16 gigabytes is pretty much, even if you're using your computer for gaming. Averagely, the amount of RAM you're using during gameplay is around 10, at the very most 11 gigabytes of RAM. Even if you're editing videos, stuff like that, at the very most you're using about 11 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, giving you a lot of free RAM to use for your L1 caching. But if you have an iGPU as well and 16 gigabytes of RAM, maybe you could decrease this to 1 gigabyte, giving you 3, something like that. So you could play around with this one, see how much RAM you're using, see how much is left for your system. What you don't want to do is assign this 4. Now I'm totaling off 6 gigabytes. My system will become unstable in this setting because, take note, I have an iGPU. So there you have it. Stick to 512, stick to 32, enable differ write. 10 seconds is good enough time. You could stick to native, flush L1 to L2. Meaning of this one here, I only have 358 megabytes of writing. Flushing it to L2 meaning if my L1 is full of writing tasks, most of the jobs will be transferred to my L2 capacity, something like that. So it cascades down, or the hierarchy of it. So that's the explanation of it. That's why we enabled the writing for L1 caching. Prefetch last cache and start at Windows boot. Thing with start at Windows boot, some users are experiencing problems with this one. They're experiencing delays loading Windows up. But if your Windows is installed into your SSD, you may not experience this problem. And if you do, simply disable it and run the computer again. It should be fine after that. Okay, so that's my preferred configuration. And finally, I wanna show you guys. I want to show you guys how PCMark performs. I get 3123 score, PCMark score, with no caching whatsoever. This one here is what's important. The launching app startup score, 6,348, no caching. With L2 cache, 7.4 or 10,705. That's quite a big jump with L2 cache only enabled. What am I trying to say? If you really don't have any RAMs to spare for L1 cache, you could set your L1 cache to disabled, no problem. You'd still be able to notice some performance boost. With L1, with my preferred configuration, 3372. Preferred configuration is 3426, and my app startup score jumps to 11,000 points. So that's quite a lot. And file transfer speeds are even more spectacular. I just show you the last one. There you go. You could just pause the video if you want to see more of the details. Do take note, my caching, my L1 caching is only 512 megabytes. And the file I'm handling is one. Out of simplicity, let's treat this as a file task, or the file size is 1 gigabyte. The score is still not bad. It still beats the score of my SSD file transfer or file handling. Okay, so with this number alone, the performance is really not bad, considering it's beyond my L1 cache, but still the right performance is still quite well. With Intel Optane on its own, the writing speed of Optanes are limited to 300 megabytes per second, and because we have L1 enabled, it was still able to perform beyond 300 megabytes per second, which isn't bad at all. So there you go. And another thing to note, do remember Primo Cache as well limits writing speeds of SSDs, but with the help of L1, it's still able to speed things up a bit. You might wonder how. Again, as I've mentioned, there are 3 tiers, right? L1, L2, hard drive. First, it tries to write using L1. It gets filled up. Some of the overwritten files are transferred to L2. If it's still filled up, then very slow performance hard drive. What it's trying to do now is, it's beyond L1 capacity, right? 1 gigabyte, 512. But that's not always the case, because it's continuously transferring or processing the task behind the scenes, right? So as soon as L1 cache frees up a bit, it's able to help out somehow, something like that. So that's why I'm saying having L1 enabled is quite important, especially if you're using Primo Cache for your caching. All right, so that's about it for closing. I was really fond of this Optane. I really decided to keep this installed wherever my hard disk is. For example, I transferred my hard drive to my other computer. I will bring my Optane along with it. Why? Again, it's not a good idea to use SSDs for caching most of the time, especially for large file transfers or handling of large files. Reason for that is the lifespan of SSDs depend on the amount of writes it does. For 400 peso, 16 gigabyte of M.2 SSD. It dying on me is not really a big of a deal. So I'd much prefer wasting the Optane 400 peso Optane than my very expensive SSD, something like that. So yeah, that concludes it. And as always, I hope you like this video, and hopefully it's able to help someone out. And see you in the next one.